in our fourth year, we were given the opportunity, there was a connection with an inner London council called Newham, which is one of the councils, one of the London boroughs in the East End of London, and you'll know from many cities around the world, the East End of London is much less affluent, let's say, than the west side of London and so on. And this particular borough was particularly deprived in so many ways, and a very large refugee population, but also quite a lot of minority groups lived there. And we were given the opportunity to do a teaching practice, if we chose, there instead of in Kent.
Okay.
And of course we thought about that quite a lot, because Newham is a tough place to work. And I thought, actually, I want to give that a go. So I went, I mean, and I'm from London, so that wasn't an issue, but I went and did my teaching practice in Newham with a couple of my
And this is a new experience for you?
Yeah, teaching in that area. I mean, and I didn't live in that area either.
So
we lived on the, we're
right.
in the outskirts of southeast London, on the border of Kent, so it was quite different to where I was doing that teaching practice.
And I'm sure during that, you heard stories about it.
Oh yeah.
So I'm sure you had to be a little apprehensive.
We were very nervous. Yeah, very nervous.
Well, how many teachers went with you?
There was about, I guess, there were about 40 of us, I think, who did it. And then our cohort was, there must have been 500 us in our cohort, but only about 40 of us actually went up to Newham. And we all stayed in, there was like a lodging place that we stayed in all together. And we all went to the schools near to that place.
How long was this? How long did you have to do this?
It was 3.5 months. So we moved up in January, and then we finished at the beginning of April. So it's a big undertaking to do that, but it was absolutely life-changing.
So tell me again, what are the points that got to you that you'll never forget?
Well, for a start, behaviour is quite different when you're in an inner London school.
How was it?
Chairs being thrown and
wait,
wait. If you think about the stereotypical inner London deprived
tell me
school.
what you saw. Not what I don't want to hear about what you heard. What you saw that you said, okay.
Well, that's exactly what I saw, and I thought, okay.
As soon as when your first day there,
there's very different energy and rhythm in some of those
Now,
schools.
what caused that chair to be thrown?
I think a lot of what we saw the difference was the economic challenges that some of those families were facing, but also the demographic of that area. So the place where I was working, and actually Newham's got an interesting demographic generally, that they have this kind of arc of refugees through the middle. So you could be working in Newham and work in a school where it's predominantly Polish or Eastern European students, so predominantly white students, or you could be in other areas like in the south of the borough, were mostly Caribbean families, or in the north of the borough, which were mostly Pakistani and Indian families, and which is amazing in one area. Where I was in the north of the borough, and 95% of my class were either from Pakistan or India, and a lot of those families and a lot of those children were living in poverty, quite heavy poverty, but the thing that you did see was that families didn't break up. So there were a lot of siblings, and whether or not the mum and dad were, happy, they didn't break up. So there wasn't a high divorce rate. Whereas in other parts of the borough, there were. It was really fascinating, really fascinating.
Because you come back and talk to your cohorts or the other teachers about the borough they were in. Would you take notes? Like when you guys got together back in your dorm?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then you say, okay, now this group, none of them have their fathers.
That's exactly.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
and you say, no, they're all staying together, but they're miserable.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And actually, I was in the north of the borough, and my best friend was in the south of the borough, and working in a completely different demographic, exactly as you just described. And we had such different experiences. But the thing that we both shared, and all of us shared, was that, gosh, we learned how to teach there. We learned how to behaviour manage. We learned how to take a child who really couldn't do something.
How? What did you do?
When children are behaving naturally, because that's their default, you're not having to necessarily behaviour manage. You're not having to find strategies that engage students. You're not having to really go above and beyond to really get their interest. Right. Because if you're dealing with poverty outside of school, I've got to do quite a lot to get you interested in you're thinking about what's happening at home. I've got to really get your interest. Whereas if you're at home, everything's, smooth and plain
You can end up
sailing.
like
You come to
where you're so
school,
happy,
exactly. You
bubbly,
come
and
to
just
school, exactly. You can focus.
energy, right?
But not every child's got that.
That's true.
So you know, when you're in a school like that, you've really got to be able to teach. You've really
How
got
did you do
to.
it?
Well,
How did you do it? Did you come in with whistles and bells, or
no,
did you have a big
well,
slap?
maybe to begin with, the tap dancing on
Kids
the
go,
table. What's going on here?
Yeah, right.
No, I think it's about relationships and it's about trust. They have to trust that you've got them and that you're there for them and that you're not going anywhere.
How did you, for your group, how did they find out that they could trust you?
What
do you think you did?
I think consistency, and I constantly, and also feedback. I think you're constantly saying to them, look, you're doing this really well, let's work on this now, and giving them that dialogue.
Didn't they ever get nasty with you? When you say you're trying to be nice, but no one's been nice to them.
Nobody had been nice to them. It's just they're just in challenging situations. And yes, sometimes there were moments when it got hairy, let's say. But actually, genuinely, I think when kids can see that there's somebody, I'm invested in you, like I'm here and I'm not going anywhere.